Marhaba and hello once again. I'm Dr. Jack Dempsey, American writer and historian living in Crete these days. And with me is Muhammad Jihad Ismael, a writer and historian of the Palestinian people living in exile, like his family since his ancestry, in Gaza, in Deir al-Balah, in the Gaza territory. It is March 3rd, 2023, and we're here today with our part three of the life of Shaphir, Muhammad's family's ancient village from which his grandparents were exiled in 1948. We're going to get to that in just a moment, but we always want to stress with our much appreciated, if you watchers and listeners, that if you've seen photos from Ukraine and Turkey, these catastrophic, terrible earthquakes and the war in Ukraine, of course, then with all great sympathy and respect for the victims of those disasters, which are seeing over 90 countries come to their aid, and that's wonderful news. You have to understand that that's exactly how the Palestinians have been living in Gaza for 15 years, and no one's coming to help them. There is no hope in sight for them. Today, maybe they had 8 hours electricity if they're lucky. If they need a shower, the water is virtually poisonous. You have to be very careful about it. And the electric pump might not work. So you have to be, as Muhammad was telling me today, very lucky just in order to get a bath. Then, if you're thirsty, you go out and you buy bottled water. If you're hungry, you're lucky if you can put a meal together for your family for the next day. They're feeding 12,000 people off one daily truck of supplies that comes in. If you do the math, 2.5 million people, half of them children, by 250 supply trucks allowed into Gaza by day by Israeli apartheid, then you understand the odds of getting the proper nourishment. Hospitals, medicine, where can they turn for hope? And as we always say here, the answer is me and you. We who live a relatively free life on the outside, an infinitely freer life than the Palestinians in Gaza are able to have at all. So when we say me and you, we mean, well, our little program that we call Family to Family. And if we are able to help one Palestinian person or child or family with some kind of financial support, then that's worth it. All we do is use Western Union. We've been helping them to expand their home into a better living situation, buying some canned milk over the past year when his beautiful twin young daughters were born. It's been an amazingly wonderful friendship, and we want to help people of the world to reach over the walls of the Palestinians' confinement and to keep them going while they wrestle and work for justice and to determine for the first time in a long time their own fate. Secondly, we always ask contact your government, an email, a letter, a phone call, maybe more than one, and demand changes that your government's policies express now either an indifference to or a support for Israeli apartheid because that's where they live. Practice BDS, boycott, divest, and sanctions. You can buy Palestinian olive oil online rather than buy it from another source just to support their farmers with a few trees left. So that's what we would like to communicate with every single time that we come on here to talk and to share with people of the world. Now, Mohammed, thank you for your patience as always with my long introductions for our English speaking audience around the world. But just to quickly review, in the first program, we were talking about the ancient roots of your Palestinian family and their life in Shafir. Very ancient roots. The place goes back to Canaanite times. That's pre Israelite times, as we in the archaeological world like to sometimes say it. Then we talked about the farming life. There were 4 to 5 thousand people living in this place, but it was a very significant place on the landscape. It's in the middle dash eastern part of the Palestinians' original territory. And Muhammad's grandparents grew up there, lived there, and had their family there. And then we talked on the second part about how cultivated a place it was, both in terms of its agriculture and the educational levels of the Palestinian people who had to speak all different kinds of languages and thereby participate in their own political life on their land in the midst of different foreign colonial masters and also in their exercise of just the human intellect, which, as you know, has been brilliant down the ages. So, Muhammad, anything from our first two earlier periods of Shaphir's life that you've been reflecting on, maybe you want to share before we come to that pivotal moment in 1948?
Yeah, thank you, brother, for this new opportunity, and thanks for all our friends who are watching us now. In fact, as you just mentioned, Shafir was very ancient village. It's one of the most important and most prominent villages in central Palestine. Uh, as you just mentioned, it dates back to the Canaanite era, to the Middle Bronze Age. I want to say that during the Crusaders, Shafir was a very, very important point for the Crusader army. They used to camp in Shafir, and they used to make or to build a castle on
Mm-hmm.
the land of Shafir.
Mm-hmm.
This castle was called Ziyofir. This castle was built by the builders of the Crusader army, and through this castle, in fact, they used to monitor the surrounding of the area. They
Of course.
used to make expeditions for the surrounding, whether the area from Hebron in the west, reaching to Gaza to the south, and the Mediterranean on the west, and even reaching to Joppa on the north. So
Mm-hmm.
through Ziyofir, the Crusaders used to monitor all the surrounding area, and they used to monitor all the central Palestine. Uh, Shafir in the Crusader campaign was very, very prominent. And after the Crusader, in the early Islamic era, Shafir people didn't convert all of them to Islam, but they used to make or to create this beautiful mosaic picture. Some of them remained Jews, others remained Christians, and the third part used to convert to Islam.
And
So,
yes, you mentioned that in Shafir there was a temple, a mosque, and a Christian church, that all the different parts of the
exactly.
community had respect and had their own place in the religious landscape of Shafir.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, Shafir gave us a strong proof that its people were not forced to convert. They didn't convert to Islam by sword,
Mm,
but they used to convert to Islam by their understanding, by their by their own choice, not by sword. No
I
one
understand.
pushed them or enforced them
Yep.
to be Muslims.
And
Yeah,
these
because
traditions, these memories were part of your grandmother Nazira and your grandfather's life there in Shafir. They remembered these aspects of Shafir as points of pride and tradition and understanding their world and where they had come from, right? So as
exactly,
1948 approached, this is
yeah,
probably the most radically changing, radically different, traumatic year in almost all of Shafir's history. That you
yeah,
said that one afternoon, you didn't, I forget the month, but in one of the days of their year when they were living their life and raising their crops and raising their children. They were having a meal together. What were they eating, Muhammad? And who was there? Your grandmother Nazira, and who else was there? And what were they having for their midday meal?
Okay, brother, please let me, before answering on this question, let me just in 2 minutes, in a couple of minutes, just to explain another thing
Okay,
about the
sure.
ancient Shaphir.
Sorry about
Now,
that.
before the now before the now before the rise of Christianity in Palestine, through Jesus and his saints, his 12 saints. Of course, most of them were Palestinians. I think 7 or 8 of them were Palestinians. Before Christianity, the dominant religion was paganism, and they used to worship the Dagon god. Dagon. And of course, as an archaeologist and historian, of course, you know Dagon.
Yes.
And Shaphir was inhabited by the Polisati, by people of the sea, by people of the sea. Now I will reveal a secret in front of you and in front of all the people who are watching us. My grandmother told me that her neighbor in the village in Shaphir used to make a woolen blanket. When she used to make this blanket, she used to draw two coasts or two banks. The eastern one is Crete. The western one is Palestine, and in the way between them, she used to sew or to draw a humble boat with a humble sail.
Hmm.
So they have a strong belief that they were the children of the ancient people of the sea. Yeah,
Wow. That's going back a
yeah,
long way.
yeah, yeah. This blanket was made in the 30s. In the 30s, so like 2 decades before Nakba. She informed me that both of Crete and Palestine were located on the blanket, and in the middle, a primitive boat with a little sail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
And
to
we
answer your
mentioned that
question,
the original name of Gaza was Minoa, as
of
in
course,
Minoans of Crete, perhaps, eh? So
of course, of
so
course.
continue, Muhammad. You were going to tell us about that day.
Yeah. In fact, I think it was in the summer. It was a sunny day, a hot day. Of course, in the year 1948. Frankly, I don't remember the exact month or the exact day. But generally, in the summer of 1948, my ancestors, my grandfather, my grandmother, have informed me that in that sunny day, they used to prepare for their lunch. Their lunch was okra
Hmm.
cooked in tomato paste with some basil leaves, was like a topping on
Hmm.
the plates.
Hmm.
And of course, they used to eat some green pepper with some salt. They put the green pepper on salt and they eat it
Hmm.
raw, cooked
Hmm.
with the okra, with the cooked okra. She told me I was preparing the meal. I put 2 plates. They were full of okra cooked in tomato sauce or tomato paste. Your grandfather started to eat. He used to cut the loaf of bread and he
Hmm.
started to eat. He put in his mouth the first piece of bread. and he directly or suddenly listened a noise in front of the door. He never mind. He didn't give any attention to what happened. But when he stuffed the second piece of bread in his mouth, a strong knock started to be heard on the door. So he used to open the door, and of course he was frightened. He's a human, consists of emotions and feelings. Of course, no doubt, he felt afraid. And she started to pray to the Lord. Lord Allah, please protect us. Please protect us. Be merciful upon us. He opened the door. He found 4 armed soldiers. Their number was 4. They were armed by guns, long guns, and directly they asked him, you have, or they ordered him, you have 1 minute to leave the house. If you remain inside the house, we will shoot your house, not by those guns, but by the artillery. Come here, look there. What do you see? Big artillery. By this artillery,
British
by this
weapons.
artillery, we are going to smash your house upon your head and upon the heads of your children. You have 1 minute, 60 seconds to go back, to go out, to leave the house. He asked them, please give me extra time. I want to save some materials, some clothes, some precious things. Please give me just some minutes. Just give me half an hour. They refused. They refused, and they told him, "Oh, you are wasting the time. Now you have 30 seconds, not 60. Now you have half of a minute. Go out now. We will ask the artillery to hit the house." So he shouted at my grandmother, "Azira, go out, quickly. Carry the children and go out. Leave everything in the house and go out." And he went inside the house and he started to help Nazira, my grandmother, to carry the small children and to leave the house. So after they left the house, they asked the artillery to storm the house. Two shells hit the house, and it became a heap of rubble, and a pillar of dust became in the sky or in the horizon. After that, my grandmother, of course, was crying, and my grandfather also was crying, and of course the cooked okra smashed inside the house, inside the rubble. After that,
and at that
they
time,
started.
at that time, Muhammad, your grandmother was going to have a baby, and that baby
Yeah,
was going to
she
become
was
your
pregnant.
father. Yes,
She was
and
pregnant.
that baby was going to become your father.
Of course, she was pregnant with my father. She was pregnant in her 8th month. So
Eighth
after
month.
maybe 2 weeks, so maybe after like 2 weeks, she's going to make birth.
Yes. Now,
And in the
before we
way,
tell about that, okay, they are told to leave the house in Shaphir. What do you do then? You have been thrown out of your own home onto the street. What do you do then? What did they do then?
yeah, in fact, in that time, they hadn't any alternative inside the village
Of
because all
course,
the people, all the villagers were expelled. Not only my grandfather and the grandmother.
of
So
course.
they haven't any alternative house or any alternative shelter inside
Yes.
Shafir. Their only choice was to immigrate directly, whether to Hebron or to Gaza. And now, some sort of conversation took place between both of them. My grandfather has a vision or has an opinion to go to Hebron, but my grandmother Nazira insisted to go to Gaza. She told him Gaza is better because when we walk to Gaza, we are going to walk on on a stable land, a stable altitude, a plain land.
Yes.
But if you want to go to Hebron, we have to go. We have to go to a
Yes.
mountain area.
Yes.
And as you see, I am pregnant. I am so tired. I cannot walk to a high altitude. I
Yes.
cannot go. I cannot walk through the mountain tracks or
Of
mountain
course.
roads.
Yes. Yes.
So finally he was convinced by her opinion, and they decided to walk to Gaza because it's easier to walk to Gaza than walking to Hebron.
Of course.
Yeah.
So what happened, Muhammad? They literally just took whatever clothes they had, maybe one or two things from the house, and walked onto the road and walked to Gaza. How many kilometers about is it from Shaphir to Gaza?
Yeah, they used to walk like 45 kilometers, but they didn't cross this distance directly. They used to stay some days in the villages they face in their way. So every 3 or 4 kilometers, when they face unoccupied village, they used to take rest inside this village, maybe for 1, 2, 3 days. Yeah,
And this is the hospitality that you mentioned in part one of this, talking about Shafir, that it was sacred to the Palestinian people to show hospitality to people who needed their help. I think you also mentioned that your grandmother told you she remembered looking up in the sky and seeing the airplanes that were flying very low above them to frighten them onward, to push them down the road and away from Shafir, and to tell them that they are never coming back.
yeah. She told me we were to die. The Lord has saved our souls by a miracle. Because when we were walking from Shafir to Gaza, thousands, not hundreds, but thousands of other roadmates were killed by the planes. We used to see the pilot. He was looking to us with an angry eyes, with an angry eyes. Yeah, and they used to fly uh, on a tree level, a
Treetop
tree top
level?
level, a
Yes.
tree top level. Exactly. They used to fly over us on a tree top level. So you speak about maybe between 10 to 20 meters only. Yeah, and those planes were French, not American. In that time, America didn't arm the Israeli army yet. All of
Mhm.
the Israeli arms were French, and those planes were from the type Mystère planes, Mystère, a French
Yes.
made, of course.
Yes.
Yeah,
So they were walking for many days, stopping in villages on the way to Gaza, which they thought was the best place to go because there were already other refugees there. And then on the road, as they got near to Gaza, tell me about what happened with your grandmother and how your father was born.
Yeah. Firstly, let me tell you and inform our viewers
Yes.
and watchers. In fact, between Shaphir and Gaza, we have 21 villages. So if you want
Wow.
to walk from Shaphir to Gaza, yeah, you have in your way 21 villages. Of course, they didn't use to take rest in all of them, but they used to select some of them because in that time she was pregnant and was tired and was terrified by the
Yes,
storming of her house in front of her eyes.
of course.
So they used to walk slowly, despite of the air raids. In fact, I think they used to take rest. I think, as I remember, I think they selected 4 or 5 villages out of these 21 villages. In their way, in the middle of the way from Shafir to Gaza, exactly in the middle, she used to birth. She used to birth my father. My father Jihad was her baby. She born my father, and she born him without a hospital, without a clinic, without a nurse, without any kind
Water.
of help, without any kind of medical intervention.
So she went to the
Uh,
side, she went to the side of the road, perhaps found some shade under a tree. Your grandfather was with
exactly.
her. Your grandfather was with her to try to make her comfortable and to help her as much as he could. But this is almost unimaginable for most people. The baby was born, he was a boy, and they talked about his name, right?
Yeah, in fact, exactly, brother. She went to a shade of a sycamore fig tree. She went to the shade of a sycamore fig tree,
Yes.
and in that time, directly she used to pull the head of the baby by her hand like this. You know,
Wow.
she
Yeah.
she told me she told me in that time she was surprised and astonished how this baby is alive. She was sure in her inside that he's dead due to the
The conditions.
fear. Yeah, yeah, due to the fear. She was very, 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 very frightened. So she had a strong feeling that this baby was died. But when he started to shout and to cry, she embraced him, started to kiss him, and she started to thank the Lord under this sycamore fig tree. Thank you, Lord, for this present. Thank you. You are generous. I didn't expect that this baby will be alive.
And what name did they give him?
Jihad, Jihad, the man who struggled for his dignity, for his people, for his culture, for his rights.
And that is what jihad means. So you, Muhammad, they came somehow, I can't even imagine, to Gaza. And was there some help there in Gaza for them? How did they begin to live there? Were they living in a sheltered tent?
Yeah, brother. They walked to Balah, and Balah is locating 20 kilometers to the south of Gaza. So they walked another 20 kilometers southward to Balah. In Balah, in that time, of course, they hadn't shelter. But the United Nations, the UNRWA, started to set up
Hmm.
some tents for the refugees. Of course, they took a tent for my grandfather's family. In this tent, they lived until 1954. They lived 6 years inside this tent. In the year 1954, UNRWA started to develop the houses. They started to make some primitive rooms. You can have one room with a small kitchen and a small bathroom, something looking like the caravan. You know the caravan.
Yes. And
Yeah.
this is that description right there tells the audience probably what they may know, that you've been living with your family in those same conditions, in one big room with a toilet facility and a small kitchen ever since. That's the way you grew up, Muhammad. And your father worked very hard to support and help the family. Your mother, Nazira, was a powerful person. And I was sorry to hear that she just passed away recently, but you and her used to talk all the time. I'd like to mention one thing and then ask you about Shaphir now. Okay. It sounds crazy to think that we could ever say your grandfather and your grandmother, of course, but that they were lucky. But they were lucky in one way, because I just discovered in an article in the Israel Palestine News by Yazan Al Saadi. It's called Israel's Little Known Concentration and Labor Camps. Israel's little known concentration and labor camps. There were 22 of them. This was published on February 8th, 2023, in the Israel Palestine News. This happened between 1948 and 1955. But they were taking the Zionists, Palestinian men, young boys, middle aged men in their prime and older sometimes, to do heavy labor that was involved with the occupation. And it was not at all a pleasant experience for those people. Okay, so he might have been lucky, at least in that sense, that they did not take your grandfather right away into that kind of an organization. But what about Shaphir today, Muhammad? We have 6 minutes, I think, but what about Shaphir today? Is it there? Who lives there? And what do you think and feel about it?
Yeah. In fact, brother Shafir was totally erased from existence. She was totally erased after the immigration of its original and indigenous inhabitants.
Mhm.
Now, now in Shafir, they replaced the village with so many settlements. I think if you want to speak about Shafir and its surrounding, now we have, I think, more than 10 or 11 settlements. But the biggest one and the most prominent one is Merkaz Shapira. Merkaz Shapira,
Mhm.
and Merkaz in Hebrew means center in English. So it's the center of Shapira, the center of Shafir, the heart, the core, the hub. Yeah.
So I am
Merkaz,
surprised. I am surprised that I can hear the old name Shafir in the name Shapira. They let that survive.
brother, in fact, they used to steal all of our names, all of our Canaanite names. All of the Israeli names are derived or stolen from the original Canaanite ones.
Because they
Not
are
only
all
Shafir.
Semitic. They are all Semitic peoples.
Yeah,
They are very
yeah,
closely related, which is a
yeah, of course.
surprise when you think of about how divided they have been.
Yeah,
So
yeah. One of the
Shafir,
other
though, the old Shafir is gone. This must be a heartbreaking thing for you when you think of your family history.
Of course, brother. All, of course, brother. It's a big problem when you have some sort of uh, like thinking when you start to think what Shaphir was before and what Shaphir became now. Uh, it's
And
a
the
very, very, very,
settlements,
very, very bad feeling, brother.
the settlements there now are for Jewish people only.
Of course, of course. Let me complete, brother, this point. Uh, One of the settlements is called Shaphir. Shaphir, the direct name. One
Ah,
of the settlements is called Shaphir, only Shaphir. Yeah. But most of them are small and agricultural compounds. The biggest one, according to population and area and the economical activities, the biggest one, according to all of these points, is Merkaz Shapira. Yeah.
and
Of course, all yeah. Beside the Merkaz Shapira, the rest of the settlements are small, minor settlements, not big ones like Merkaz Shapira.
but
If you want to speak
the
about,
original place is gone. About 4 programs ago, we were talking about what instructions does the Bible give to the Israelite people, how they should behave toward the original native Canaanite and Philistine people who live there, and it tells them to exterminate them, to remove them from the land. And it's as if these settlements now are fulfilling that biblical command. It's an amazing thing. Many people have said too that, well, the existence, the foundation of Israel is justified by the European Holocaust. And there is a lot, of course, of substance behind that fact. At the same time, the Holocaust is why they should know better. The Holocaust
yeah,
is
yeah,
asking them, why then are you imposing apartheid on the Palestinian people who are related to you in the first place? Muhammad, we're
yes,
going to have to close for today. I hope people will go to Jack Dempsey Writer at WordPress.com, Jack Dempsey Writer at WordPress.com to see the beautiful pictures of Muhammad's beautiful family home. They just put up beautiful new windows into the frames this week, and life is getting a little better for them. We hope too that my poor pitch for family to family will somehow stay with you and you'll consider making friends with these wonderful Palestinian people who so much need your support right now just to get through what they're in because there's no future, there's no hope for them at all right now. Muhammad, please say what you'd like to as we close for today. And I thank you very much for all you shared.
thank you, brother, for your patience. Thanks for the viewers. I think in the coming programs, we have to speak more and more about life in Palestine before Nakba, before the
Yes,
catastrophe of the year
and we will.
1948. Yeah, brother. Thank you
And
so
we will.
much. Because it's our job as historians. Me and you are historians, and I think
And
it's our duty.
as
Yeah,
citizens of the
exactly.
world, too, to our brothers and sisters. Thank you, Muhammad. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.